Hey you guys, so technically it is the first week of September, but let's pretend it's still the final week of August, because you know what that would mean? It is style study time! Things are still a little chaotic, but this series is the one constant in my life and I could use a little comfort today. Seriously, you do not want to know what's going on behind this camera. But because I need some extra love this week, we're going to take a look at an artist that I truly love, but I don't feel like a lot of you guys know about her because she hasn't been requested yet, and I'm gonna be honest you guys, I'm a little disappointed in you. But today we're going to take a look at the beautiful, ornate, classically stylized work of Maria Dimova, better known by her online name Mary Dimary. If you've just now stumbled upon my channel, hi, welcome! I am so glad you're here because today we're going to level up your art by like 1,000,000%. Style Study is a regular series we do here on my channel where we take a look at some of our favorite contemporary artists, analyze their work and see what we can learn from it. Keyword, learn. We're not here to plagiarize anyone's work or copy their style. We're only here to learn some cool art tips and tricks and see how we can apply them to finding our own unique art style. Today's video is going to be structured in two parts. In part one, we'll take a look at Maria's work, analyze her style and see what we can learn from it. And part two will be a study of one of her original paintings. The beautiful reference I've chosen today is this one. If you guys enjoyed this video and learned something today, please do remember to like and subscribe. Comment below your biggest takeaway from this study and come say hello on social media. All of my links are in the description. But now, if you're ready, grab a snack, sit back, and let's dive into another style study featuring Mary Dimary. Maria Dimova is a freelance illustrator from Chisinau, Moldova. On her website, she mentions how one of the main motives of her work is feminine beauty and how she is not at all afraid of trying new techniques, which is certainly something you can see in her work as her style progresses. The other thing you'll notice is the heavy influence of the Art Nouveau movement, which we'll break down in just a little bit. Maria's beautiful art has garnered her over 292,000 followers on Instagram and over 6.4 thousand followers on Facebook. As you can tell, the vast majority of Maria's work is based around very feminine character portraits with lots of details and decorative elements. The entire focus of the piece is on the character itself, while the background plays a minimal role. With the characters themselves, it is always a very aesthetic portrait as opposed to a scene that they're engaged in, if that makes sense. Like in high school English literature terms, it is less a narrative piece and more of a descriptive piece. So while there are elements on the character that do tell you their story, they kind of surround and add to the character as opposed to the character simply being one of several elements in the scene. And no matter what the character, they always have lots and lots of extra elements that give you a very heavily detailed scene, despite it all just being accessories to enhance the character. Because as it turns out, Maria is definitely an ornamentalist. Speaking of lists, here are 4 key characteristics to Maria's art. As part of my study on Maria's work, I actually had a deep dive into the Art Nouveau style in general. It was born around the very late 1800s to the very early 1900s and was actually the style of art they used a lot in luxury advertising at the time. You've probably seen an Art Nouveau painting before because they're all over Pinterest, particularly the works of Alphonse Mucha. What characterizes Art Nouveau is these long, luscious lines and curves, lots of framing elements, and most of all, tons and tons of extra decorative elements. You'll have loads of natural elements like flowers, leaves, animals, and birds surrounding the primary character. And you also see ornate frames and lots of jewelry, flowing fabric, and even stained glass. The entire point of it, in my opinion, is to represent abundance, or what they would have considered abundance back then, as well as femininity and fertility. Another important characteristic is these very visible outlines that add even more detail to an already heavy composition. You'll see pretty much all of these elements in Maria's own art. So there is these long flowing lines of hair embedded with jewelry and flowers. There's the super detailed ornaments literally everywhere. And a lot of the times there are also very pronounced ornate frames surrounding the characters. But what I find interesting is how she adds her own flair to these pieces. Because you'll see things like skin that has actual rendering, lots of dimensionality in the hair alongside the lines, and also makeup and face paint. These come together to add a modern flair to the classical style, and they are what makes Maria's art so very personal to her. Maria herself says that her art is very deeply rooted in the beauty of femininity, and you can see this in both the compositions and the stylistic choices. For one thing, most of the characters are very feminine women with large round or almond-shaped eyes and dark fluttery lashes, a trait culturally associated with feminine beauty. The nose and mouth are very idealized, but definitely not extremely stylized like you would see in modern manga-inspired art. So the characters have sharp, upturned noses and soft, glossy lips, but it's not too crazy unrealistic. The hair is often long and wavy, but even short or tied up hair has movement. Like, there is no better word I can use to describe it. We'll look specifically at the hair in just a second, but the long flowy locks definitely add to the traditionally feminine appeal. Then there is all the flowers and jewelry that are literally everywhere. You'll see flowers in the hair, or at least around the head, which gives these characters a very nature goddess vibe. Then there's the very traditional looking jewelry, so most of it is gold with inlaid gems and engravings. There's necklaces of pearl, which I don't know about you, but to me it is literally the most classic thing in the world. You'll see a lot of fine embroidered silk fabric that again depicts a very abundant character. Put together, it is all just a symphony of feminine luxury. What's interesting is that even on the rare masculine character, you'll still see elements of silk and fine jewelry that make the piece look traditionally feminine. The rendering is where I feel Maria's work deviates from traditional Art Nouveau, because she actually paints everything to have lots of dimension. So the skin definitely looks like skin, like it has form and everything. What's interesting, however, is that she also paints a lot of light and shadow in the hair and other elements, despite them also having a lot of line art. So here, even though you see that there is an absolute chaos of line art in the curls, there are still ambient occlusion shadows behind the face, by the shoulders, and also between the larger sections of hair. Here you'll see the shading in the petals of the flowers and also in the fabric and jewelry. However, in terms of composition, all of this chaos, shading and texture actually acts as a subtle frame for the main focus of the piece, which is the face. So you'll see that the skin has no harsh lines inside of the face and is instead a visually quiet zone for your eyes to rest on. There aren't any crazy strong shadows, there isn't an insane amount of color variation, hell, there aren't even very harsh specular highlights. It is all very soft, supple and calming. However, the textures can be quite interesting because as a whole, although Maria usually paints on Procreate on an iPad, there is a very traditional art feel in her work. Now, part of this could be a photo texture overlay that makes it all look like it's drawn on paper, but I also think a lot of this has to do with the brushwork. For one thing, I noticed while doing the study that the lines aren't smooth and perfect, they're very textured. So it's like she used a sharp, scratchy pen to do the lines on very heavily textured paper, and it is such a cool way to break up what would otherwise be very monotonous lines. Plus, some portraits have this chalky hatching that is very subtle, but it adds a little bit of low contrast texture to the face. Not enough to take away from the calm smoothness of the skin, but enough to make sure it is not just flat and dull. But the overall lighting seems to be based on just one bright diffused light, usually just daylight, that comes from above and one side of the character. Occasionally you'll see a bright rim light, but that is usually only if the character is looking sideways, and it's probably there to really up the impact of the silhouette. Okay, we've established by now that the hair is extremely flowy and detailed with loads of lines. But why and what effect does it have? Well, it all comes back to the key word that defines Maria's work and just Art Nouveau in general, that is ornamental. Everything about this style is there to add aesthetic value, more so than any story value anyway. As a result, even the little things like the leaves, the lines of the lashes, and more pertinently the lines of the hair tend to kind of flick upwards in a very ornamental way. By ornamental, I'm talking about this type of shape, the very vintage ornamental design. Now, you might be thinking, Srish, I don't see any of these shapes, you're tripping. No, my friend, you are not looking deep enough. This is the perfect example. Look at the shape language in the hair here. Let me make the big shapes a little more obvious for you. Do you see it now? Look at these waves in the hair here. Boom, more ornamental shapes. How about this one? Can you find them yourself? Coming back to the lines in the hair, you'll see that they are there for the structure, not the texture. So generally speaking, we put more lines into an element in order to create texture. The fewer the lines, the smoother the surface appears, such as the face. However, in Maria's work, you'll see that the hair, despite having all these lines, still looks fluid and smooth. Why is that? It's because the lines are all continuous and uniform within each large section of hair. Within any given section of the hair, the lines follow the curve of that section all the way to the end, and they never intersect within the section. And because of this, while compositionally you still see texture because there are so many lines, visually you're not really registering it as a texture because it is all uniform. Isn't that amazing? It's almost like an illusion. But to sum up part 1 of the study, here are 4 key characteristics to Maria's work. Number 1, there is a very strong influence from Art Nouveau with the subject matter, line work, and overall framing and composition of each painting. 2, the art revolves around feminine beauty, where the characters have traditionally feminine traits such as dark fluttery lashes, smooth skin and long hair, as well as flowers and jewelry. Number 3, Maria renders skin to have little to no texture, while the hair has tons of lines. However, there is a very traditional art look and feel to each painting. And number 4, the hair plays a very important role in the shape language of each piece, creating subtle ornamental shapes with each big section of hair. For our study today, this is the beautiful reference that I've chosen. It is called Lake Maiden, and I'm gonna be honest, it felt like it would be the easiest of all of Maria's work to study since I barely had any time. However, I also really wanted to do this one specifically because of how much of it is inks. You know I'm not the best at inking and I generally have to force myself to ink anything ever, so this felt like the perfect challenge. I started with a super rough sketch, just trying to put the big elements down. I think the biggest challenge for me was to get the angle of the head right. There is a slight tilt to screen left, and also the head is tilted ever so slightly forward. This is something you will see me struggle with throughout the study, just constantly cutting and repositioning the facial features just to try and match them better to the tilt of the head. I then lowered the opacity and did a second pass of the lines. The first pass was simply to establish all the major elements in the right places, and this second pass would then refine the elements. Don't worry, this isn't the final inks, we're still very much letting ourselves be rough with it. Also, is it me or does she look exactly like Cardi B at this stage? I have no idea how that happens. I was literally watching Star Wars while drawing this. So unless there is a secret warp track in the background of Attack of the Clones, this painting was haunted by Cardi B. Now that we have refinement, we can actually start putting some inks down. I chose a scratchy brush here, which has kind of a texture that causes the line to crack when you apply very low pressure. I tested a few brushes out before recording this part, and this one, the Ink 7 Brush Rough from the David Revoy brush pack, felt absolutely perfect. Also, can I just say this is the most fun I've ever had drawing eyes? Oh my goodness, these are such unusual shapes, and that eyeliner actually brought my soul to life. Oh, it's so beautiful. Also, as I'm sure you can tell, I did not have the stabilizer on for the brush because I wanted these lines to be really organic and hand-drawn. And I'm gonna be honest, I actually really much prefer the inks I drew over here over the finished painting that I made later on. But anyway, I did a little cheat and saved a desaturated version of the reference so I could do a value painting first. Since most of the face was desaturated, it made more sense in my head to do the whole thing in grayscale and then simply color the blue on top. I just used my magic brush here, which is a hard edge round brush with pressure opacity settings. After the values were done, I painted on the blue in the face and the ribbons, added the yellow face paint, and then was stumped for a while as I figured out how to do a pattern fill layer. The piece needs to have that beautiful grain that we see in the original, so I decided to overlay a grainy pattern and then change the blend mode and reduce the opacity. And with that, here is the finished painting. Looking back, I shouldn't have done that liquefy because the inks just look so much closer to the reference, but oh well, what do you think? And there we have it, Mary Dimary Demystified. Now, if by any chance you haven't seen Maria's work before, I've left links to her pages down in the description below. Make sure you go show her some love for me. And if you've enjoyed this video and learned something today, make sure to show me some love as well by hitting that big thumbs up button below and subscribing to my channel if you haven't already. Comment below your biggest takeaway from this study because I'm really curious to see what you found most important here. And come say hello on social media. If you want to support this channel, check out my brush kit. I'll leave a link up here. There's over 60 custom brushes that I've made from scratch. So yeah, grab those and we can be brush mates. Or you can grab the brushes and a lot more rewards on my Patreon. I put all of my art as well as every single speed paint on there every single week. And there is also the entire backlog of art and chill long form tutorials for all of my patrons to watch. So if you're interested in that, then check out the cards up here or I have a link down in the description below. Are there any other artists you'd like to see a style study on in the future? First, check out my style study playlist. I'll leave it down here in the outro. I've done a ton of these already. Chances are I've probably covered some of your faves on the series before, but in case I haven't, feel free to comment below in the comment section or come tell me on my Discord server and I'll add your artist to my ever-growing list. But okay, this has been a long enough outro and that's about all I have to say today. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. I really hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. Check out some more style studies down here and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye!